us practitioners can realize more than the people who are sitting in hospital-based practices. Time is money. We don't have the time. As already discussed by Dr. Vipul, we work alone. We are the best. We like to work alone. We do all the tasks ourselves. In group practice, it becomes easier, but otherwise, we are handling our air conditioning and we are handling all the infrastructure issues. We do not have any support. We do not have access to subsidized testing. If we want to get MRIs or CTs or lab tests, we cannot get it cheap or very cheap. We don't have holidays. We lack funding to do these kind of research. But there is another problem, a more fundamental problem, and that is a problem of the attitude to research. Right from our PG time, from the time we do our thesis, we are taught that this is something just to be completed. We get unimaginative topics, we sometimes falsify the data, it's definitely biased, the approach is very, very questionable, and this attitude persists when we come into private practice. We want to build up more and more patients, quantity over quality, and that leads us to a path away from research. There is, of course, if we end up doing some kind of human research, there is a problem with institutional ethics committees, and this is something which I have faced personally because for small settings, you do not have ethics committees like you have in hospitals, and it becomes very difficult for us to get, it takes months or even years sometimes to get recommendation or project sanction from an ethics committee. So finally what happens, all of us come and sit in various scientific conferences like PCNI, and we are resigned to our role of just sitting and attending to lectures rather than actually taking part in some research. Let's use the experience and clout of the private practitioner because we are the bulk. And let's work in organized networks like PROS and by the American Academy of Pediatrics. There are a lot of topics that we can work on, but there are certain topics that we can't work. Things which require extensive laboratory tests, for example, working on hepatic encephalopathy markers, that will be very difficult for us. Things that require repeated imagings like NCC follow-ups may be difficult for us in OPD practice. But what can we do? This is an actual study which has been published. This is a study of change of nutritional status and morbidity in preschool children from SUMS in Pune. We can also work on other similar topics like secondary sex characters and menarche. We can do it over a period of time. We can do behavioral disorders like ADHD and autistic spectrum, drug utilization patterns. We had our own students who actually presented a couple of papers in this PCNI also, which were regarding drug utilization patterns. And we can also look at other similar things. This is just a list. You can go on. There are so many things that we can work on, obesity and other things. Now, this is a sample of what we have done. We have done a lot of research. Most of it is in the form of posters. We have done a couple of publications also, and a couple of them are going in. So we have done work on yellow fever vaccine. We have done work on upper respiratory infections, influenza vaccines, antibiotic utilization, etc. This is something done at our clinic setting. And this is the research done in the US. They have done research on various other parameters, and this has been very, very good. This is published in JAMA 2004. Management and outcome of cares of fever in infancy, and they actually managed to suggest that clinical guidelines which were there were actually not good, and the clinical guidelines would not improve the care. They would have resulted in more hospitalizations and lab testing, and this is the kind of research which only comes when you do it in a large setting. This had 500 practitioners involved and more than 2,000 children. You cannot get this kind of data when you do it in a unicentric setting from a single hospital. And this is just about the second last slide, and this talks about immunization status of children when IP was introduced. In US, the study was done in 1997, published in Pediatrics, and they were trying to assess whether adding IPV made immunization schedule more difficult, and they found this was not the case. So these kind of studies can easily be duplicated in our setting also if we have the kind of network they have. So finally, the appropriate clinical question answered in a scientifically rigorous manner will lead to a change in care. However, we must remember that clinical guidelines which are based basically on subspecialists, when we talk about them, they may actually fail to change care and may tend to undermine the legitimacy of the organizations which are promulgating them. Therefore, we need IAP to help us create a chapter for research in office practice, activate and coordinate efforts of pediatrics in our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gaurav. I know most of us must be thinking, is it really possible? I think if it's possible at Dr. Gaurav's clinic, I think every clinic can do that. And first of
has presented papers, international papers, I should say, in Thailand, in Australia, and these studies were done in his clinic. They were not done at any big hospital. So if these papers can be accepted in large international conferences, so I think that can be done in clinics.
So that's a good, encouraging suggestion. And you must be wondering, is it a panel discussion or a seminar? Because presentation after presentation after presentation is there. But mind you, we have reserved the best for the last. And I'm giving you, these are primers, just to stimulate your minds to come up with more questions, and it will be a good idea if you could write on a piece of paper and pass on. Then we go on to the last presentation, which I'll be making. And these days, can we have the slide? This is regarding some suggestions for introduction of technology into our office practice. Is it possible? Is it going to make things better? Is it going to make things worse? I made an attempt with some suggestions. You can choose whichever you like and whichever is feasible, whichever is implementable, whichever is possible. Now, computerization, IT, it's the literacy for future. You cannot live without IT now. Earlier it was possible. It may be a few more years before it will be literally impossible to survive in this world without knowing little bit of IT. Everywhere around you find things are digitized, everything is computerized. You go to the bank, you go to the post office, you go to MTNL office, you go anywhere. Although they may make an excuse, yeah, connectivity nahi hai, if they don't want to work, but certainly everything is online. And railways, such a big organization in the world, is so convenient to most of us now. Imagine what it used to be long time back. But unfortunately, our office practices are hardly computerized, and the data is in thin air. Failure to plan means you plan to fail. That's a famous saying. So it is never late to plan. Digitized health information would be the currency of medical practice in future. Benefits of electronic health records, I'll just try to rush through. Prescriptions are good, legible notes, accessibility of patient information anywhere, space is saved, you don't need big almiras. Increased revenue by enhancing immunization coverage by automatic reminders. Most of us are doing. Only thing is, it is being done in a sketchy, patchy manner. It needs to be more organized and less troublesome, less cumbersome for the practitioner. Device integration, I'll come to it a little later. Health information exchange. You have a stock exchange, then you'll have health information exchange. Now, Obama is struggling hard how to control the deficit, how to bring the cost of healthcare in US, and they are doing it because most of the insurance companies are really being so-called in difficulty because the health costs have gone up, really gone up. And if you see, the same reflection is coming to our country. If you have to stay in an ICU today, you have to spend thousands and thousands. Your lifelong savings are wiped out. So now the shift is from treating the current disease to outcomes. So if, as a doctor, your outcomes are bad, your insurance cost would go up, and patients also who are not so compliant are going to pay higher. So you put your health record online, it goes into a stock exchange. The health insurance company would quote you a premium. Suppose you are hypertensive, you have certain diseases, you are not taking drugs regularly, so you are going to pay a higher premium. How would they know? So the doctor has to provide them with electronic pill boxes. The moment something gets out of the pill box, it goes via the satellite, the information goes to the electronic medical record. So if you are a compliant patient, your blood pressure device would be integrated via your cable network to the health information exchange. So if you are a good person who is doing exercise, who are doing all those things, so you are a good patient. So you will have less insurance premium. But if you eat what you eat every day in conferences, you don't get your HBD done as Dr. Jog yesterday, hypertension, blood pressure, blood sugar, all those things, one has to be very careful. Your treadmill would be connected via the satellite to the health information exchange. So that sounds scary, but ultimately it's good for the patient. Another thing is Tata's. So they all corporate houses have a succession plan. But when a doctor dies, his patients don't know what to do, and during the lifetime, the doctor doesn't know what to do with his patients. So this situation needs to be rectified. So what is the asset? When you run a business, when you run an industry, you create some value. So what is the value? If I ask, or it's not directed to any of the audience, but most of us do not have records of our patients. We don't know our patients. They come in, they go out, it's all mechanical, no stable records are there. So after some time, if you say 20 years of practice, you have 10,000 records or 15,000 records, your son may not become a doctor if he is wise enough, but there may be another colleague of yours who might be interested to start a practice, so he can buy out a share of your practice, or you can sell the whole database to that particular newcomer who pays a price not for the real estate, but for getting a ready-made practice. So that is the value that record keeping brings. So main barriers. Why should I do it when I'm earning money without it? Where is the need? So all of us, including me, had this attitude. I'll not blame anything, because earlier electronic health record softwares were totally user unfriendly. They were not doctor friendly, time consuming, slowing down the work, and the service providers were unorganized, and also doctors are reluctant spenders. So your practice becomes something like this, patients coming in from top, and it's a leaky bucket. Simple solutions, let's pay homage to this and go mobile. You have the most effective way to communicate. Internal marketing, your patients need to be communicated. Dr. Jog would address that. You have the IVR systems, which saves you a lot of hassle. Your patients are facing every day at reception when it's a dengue season. Vaccine barcoding saves you a lot of hassles. Website is how the word communicates. And remote clinics is not a very far away possibility. With Skype and other internet coming in, you don't have to type. So you have already speech recognition technologies, and this funny looking square is a QR code. You can read more about it on the internet. It's a very simple thing. It straight away takes you, it's like a barcode, takes away to the website where you want to go. It's not the survival of the fittest. Species that adapts survives. Where are we? We have to decide. Thank you. So, Dr. Jog, so we thought we'll have some priming, some sensitization, and day-to-day practice problems like how much should be the fee, how much should be how should the location be, how we can handle fights in our waiting room. So I have a specialist on this, how to handle human beings. Dr. Pramod Jog, please.
Okay, my dear friends, when I started my practice, actually there was another pediatrician who was practicing by my side, and he had put up a board writing entrance. And I always had an innovative brain since beginning. And then I thought that, I have recently started my practice, what to do now? So I put up another board by his side saying main entrance. So whenever a patient used to come, he used to say, this is entrance, this is main entrance. So he used to enter into my clinic. So first of all, you must have creative brain when you start your practice. Unfortunately, there was some dog which was tied in front of my clinic by somebody. So never keep a dog in front of you, because the dog will bite the patient, but the patient will not come to you for dog bite, they will go to other doctor. So if you want, you can tie the dog at somebody else's clinic, no problem. Next important thing, remember the principle, jo dikhta hai wo bikta hai. You know, I have seen so many practitioners practicing for 30 years, but they have never bothered to cut the trees which are covering their board. You know, big trees are, coming over the board, and nobody sees the clinic also. And number two, never paint your board of the clinic. You know, if it is written Dr. Joke's Children's Clinic, let it get old. In fact, it increases the value of the clinic. People feel that this is very old clinic. If you repaint every year, it means that ye naya hai, sala experience come hai. So remember that, never paint it. Now the patient has seen the board, give the name of your surname along with children's clinic. Say Dr. Gulati's clinic, Dr. Joke's clinic, Don't give any funny names. Once I remember one of my friends, he wanted to start a new clinic and somebody suggested a name called Sadgati Clinic. So I told him, see, Sadgati is something when a patient dies, he goes up, that is called Sadgati. So even if you get carried away by some fancy names, don't give these names. Now the patient has come up from the entrance down the road. Many times the passage to the clinic, smells either of the liquor of the mothers or the liquor of the residents. And that is why you have to use plenty of room fresheners, when patients come. Agarbatti is the best one. That is because it also gives a feel that Dr. Jogi is religious, and people like that the doctor is quite religious. Remember, you have to enter on time. If the time is 9, please enter on time. It has some advantages. One, it shows your affection for your profession. Very important. Dr. Jog loves his profession. That is why he has come on time. Secondly, it tightens the staff members also. The staff usually otherwise become very loose. Dr. Jog now ka time dete, 11 baje aate. So, that is something which is wrong. And number 3, it also shows that you have value for the time of the patients also. So, please come on time. Very important. Time management we did not discuss last evening, but we will see in case if we have little time. So now the patient has come inside. In the beginning of my practice, I had very little patients. So I used to give the appointments only on one day of the week. Like Thursday, I used to tell him, come at 11 a.m. So patients, they used to think that every day now the appointments are full. But they did not know that only one patient was there, and that was on Thursday at 11 a.m. So slowly and gradually I started extending the timings. And I used to keep heaps of shoes and chappals outside the clinic. At that time I was recently married, and I told my father-in-law and mother-in-law at least to come and give their chappals, if not anything to me. So, so people used to feel that, there is a lot of crowd. And I also, after 2 years, I got a daughter, and I asked my mother-in-law to hold her in the lap and shoulders and stand in the balcony so that people feel that there are patients who are there waiting inside. And there is so much crowd that the patients are now overflown into the balcony. But that was my own daughter and not a patient. Anyway, you have to play some of these tricks. When the patient comes inside into the waiting room, remember, the waiting room has to be very good and decent, because the patient is going to spend good amount of time. So there has to be a good notice board over there, and put good clippings, maybe some articles written by you in the local newspaper where your name has been printed. When I told one of my friends to put up clippings like this, there was some, case going on against him in the Consumer Protection Act, and he had put up that clipping. So that is not the one to be put up. It is something good about you. Also write down good slokas, and there was one Gita slok that one fellow has written. I told him this is not the writing. He had written Jatasya hi dhruvam mrityuhu, dhruvam janma mritasya cho, jo paida hua hai wo upar jane wala hai. So remember, you have to think what you are putting up there. In the waiting room, you have to also keep good quality magazines dated of that date. Suppose today is 7th October, keep Times of India dated 7th October. Don't keep 7th October 1962, because it reflects your mental age also, that Dr. Jogi is keeping old magazines there. There are some people, in my clinic, they used to tear off the good pages, having photographs of Bipasha Basu, Madhuri Dixit, they used to tear off. So what I did was I had prepared a rubber stamp, and on that I had printed that if this particular magazine or the page is not found in Dr. Joke's clinic, remember it has been stolen. So once I put that stamp on every page, when he used to take it home, his son would ask him, Daddy, aapne chura liya udhar se. So out of guilt, these thefts slowly came down. Also remember to display all the mementos that you get at the conferences, the one that I got yesterday and today. You have to display it there. And you know, it gives lot of authenticity because people don't know that Dr. Joke stood first at the time of entrance to MBBS in MD and got gold medal. For them, you are the first one to be seen. That is why I put good mementos in the waiting room. Many of you might be thinking, I will never give a talk, I will never be invited, what to do? Don't worry, they are available outside at 250 or 300 rupees. And you know, you can put them up. But keep valid things there. Also put up your valid degrees. Not the ones which say that, you know, you were first in dancing when you were in 4th standard and won the football match in the 12th standard. Remember that? Good degrees are there. Now you have come to the reception. Remember at the reception counter, the staff members have to be very, very particular. Some phone call. You have to say that, see, it is in the interest of your child that I have told you this, but it is better that you bring the child in the clinic to show me, so that you are medically safe, because people these days can record your conversation also. Sometimes, you know, patients are very naughty. They don't want to pay you and they want to give you headache. I call them as, you know, patients who are H1N1. That means headache and non-paying patients. So those H1N1 patients are plenty. So you have to frighten them. So you tell them that, you know, if you don't bring this child with fever, he will have febrile convulsion. Once you say convulsion, they will come running. If a child with fever and cough and cold is there, tell them this may go on to pneumonia. Once pneumonia is said, they will come. Fever on day 5 also, some of them don't come. Then tell them this may be dengue. Okay, so take out the names, you know, so that they will come running. Remember that. At night, many patients are fond of troubling you at the midnight. And, you know, in February 2012, there was a judgment given by the Supreme Court saying sleeping is the birthright of every individual. So please remember that you are having this as a birthright and fundamental right and a constitutional right. So you are supposed to get good sleep every day. Remember, in case if you are, you know, not very strict in your voice, then you tell them at 12 o'clock and 2 in the morning, if somebody calls you, tell them the child, when you and a clever person like you feels that the child is so serious and not doing well, please admit the child. Once you utter the word admit, you know, entire gubbari ki hawa nikal jati hai. So the point is you have to say that you admit so that it is better. Also remember that there are some IT patients. IT means, you know, information technology. But they are the ones which are called as inquisitive and troublesome. They are real IT patients. And many times they come from the information from the net and come to you. If they are females, you know, they will act like Google. You put a question or answer, they will give another question. Another answer, another question. So I call them Google Core. You know, so many Google Core patients are there. And the female sex somehow, I think Gaurav should take up a research whether there are 2 Broca's areas. Because we are told that only 1 Broca's area is there for all human beings. But females will ask you plenty of questions. And that is why you have to decide as to what is to be seen. And which patients to answer depends on BQ. BQ means what is the boring quotient and what is the beauty quotient. So if you balance them, then you can decide. Anyway, there were patients who made me listen to the wheeze of the child when the child was actually wheezing on phone. And they wanted me to prescribe bronchodilators. And never prescribe medicines on phone. Once I told them, you know, Calcimax, 1 teaspoon twice daily. And the lady was nicely giving Colimex 1 teaspoon twice daily for 2 months. And the child came with bloated abdomen. So many things can convert this telephonic tea prescription into a tragedy prescription. Remember that? So you have to be very, very careful about it. Anil, do you want me to cover anything else? There are some points about communication.
How about the organizers? I mean, they can tell us the time limit.
There is a lot to be said. In case if there is time, I will, I think, continue.
If you could just...
communication we will cover because that has not been covered. And some points will keep pending
only
for...
5 minutes
okay.
we have,
okay.
But the audience never had their say. 5 minutes for questions.
Okay. Then probably
so
we can...
by 6:20...
Yeah, I will keep many of the points pending for our next meeting whenever it occurs. Till then, I will just cover up some points related to communication because they are very important. See, whenever a patient enters into your cabin, use all the 5 senses. One is smell. You have to see whether this fellow is coming. He is a politician, he is a pleader. All these are P's, you know. Then a policeman, then a pharmacist, because pharmacists are well versed with all the medicines. political leaders I told you. So all these people, you have to be very, very cautious because they are not interested in medical treatment. They are interested to know when did Dr. Jog purchase this chandelier, when did he purchase his Honda City. So as far as possible, smell them and try to dispose them off early. Secondly, whenever parents come, you give them a good shake hand. See, intimacy is very important. And when you give a shake hand, see there are different types of shake hand. One is a loose shake hand. You know, it tells that you are only meeting the fellow for the first time. Then there is a tight shake hand. Then there is a shake hand with both the hands. And the fourth one is shake hand with one hand and then put other hand on the shoulders. So that gives real intimacy. So type 4 shake hand is advisable. Then second sense to be used is listening. Many of us have forgotten the art of listening while we are becoming busy. And you know, they simply don't listen to what the patient is saying. See, the word listen has 6 alphabets, L-I-S-T-E-N. But if you reshuffle the alphabets, a new word comes out, and that is S-I-L-E-N-T, that is silent. So unless you are silent within, you cannot listen. Remember, this is very important. There are different types of listeners. Some are ignorers, some are pretenders, some are selective listeners, some are, empathic listeners. Empathy means the words are added with feeling. Just as every song has words plus music, our speech also should have words plus feelings. That is empathy. So that is very important. Your speech should, rather listening, should be empathic listening. Don't be very busy in the practice. What happens is, I remember once a child, the practitioner told him to take deep breath in and then got busy in speaking to somebody, and the child literally for 2 minutes had held the breath, and the mother asked, shall he release the breath now? So the pediatrician was so busy that he forgot to release the breath to tell the patient also. So don't be that much busy. Second is looking. Looking gives confidence to the parents, and they know that Dr. Jog knows pediatrics. That's why he is directly giving us the answers. Unfortunately, in our practice, if you look into the eyes of the child will start crying because he doesn't want doctor to look at him. Then the father and the grandfather are sitting next to the mother, so you cannot look directly into the eyes of the mother also. And that is why you can look into the eyes of the grandmother, because at that age she also loves that somebody is looking into her eyes. Okay. This grandmother is actually very important. You have to always praise her. Say that aap to 4 bachchon ki dadi maa lagti nahi. Once you say that, she will never go to any other pediatrician. Always praise them, very important. Then, of course, when you look, you should not stare. You should know what are your limits. If there is really something worth looking at, intermittently, as I told you yesterday, you can look here and there. That is okay. But you have to be controlled. Okay. Then next is, of course, the touch. Always remember, nothing impresses the patient more than a thorough clinical examination. The poorest of the poor patient will understand whether Jog was casual or whether he was serious. And as we discussed earlier, handwriting is very, very important. Most important is what you speak. There are some doctors, they only say, बच्चे को बुखार है, बच्चे को दस्त भी हो रहा है, सर उल्टी भी कर रहा है, सर कुछ चेकअप वगैरह करना है क्या?
Dr. Jog,
treatment.
Audience.
You want to ask questions? Okay, you can go ahead. If you want, I can continue, or you can take the questions. So remember that all the... Okay. You want me to continue? Okay, I will continue. I will finish with communication. So, remember that there are some habits which we usually have. Some of them, have different habits. That, there was one pediatrician who used to say, हो जाएगा. बच्चा बीमार है, हो जाएगा. बच्चे को दस्त हो रहे, हो जाएगा. Patient बोलते हैं, sir, दस्त already हो रहे हैं, और क्या हो जाएगा? I will tell you the secret of a good communication, and then probably I will last 1 or 2 minutes. See, it is said when you speak, remember, राज क्या है? What is there in the mind of the mother? आवाज क्या है? What is your voice like? अल्फाज क्या है? That means what are your words? और अंदाज क्या है? Remember, these are the 4 things which you should never forget. राज क्या है? आवाज क्या है? अल्फाज क्या है? और अंदाज क्या है? Once you master this, you have mastered communication. And whenever you speak, always remember, you have to control your anger. An angry patient is like an inflated balloon. If you release it like that, it will go to other pediatrician's chamber. So that you have to deflate the balloon very, very slowly, so that there is no problem. And even if we are cutting jokes, cracking jokes, and having fine, nice time, in the cabin you have to be very, very serious. In the Lancet, there was one sentence which was written, that a successful doctor should have bald head, a pot belly, and piles. For many years I did not know what was the meaning. Then one of my senior friends told me that bald head shows that the doctor has experience. pot belly shows that Dr. Jog is prosperous, and piles give a sense of anxiety on the face, so continuously something is pinching from below, so that the patient feels that he is worried about his son or daughter only, remember. So these are the criteria of a successful doctor. So you have to always maintain a anxious face, and never be casual about your comments. Once I remember one of the pediatricians, so this grandmother said, that you kindly check my blood pressure. So the doctor had no time. So he told his assistant, "Arey buddhi ka blood pressure check kar le." Now, which lady would like to be called as buddhi? So remember, there are many things which I would speak to you some other time. There, I can understand the constraints of time. And whenever there is opportunity, we'll discuss about some other points in practice management. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jog. I really apologize. The mood of the audience was totally different, but we have to respect time. And I really apologize, and I really appreciate you have been so appreciative of Dr. Jog's suggestions, and I hope many of them would be implemented tomorrow. So there are two questions that I have. One is, in a private clinic, is it better to change the name of antibiotic/medicine for the patient on the next visit, as mothers tend to give those medicines before consulting you? Dr. Arya, any suggestions?
My suggestion is, why give an antibiotic at all? Why you want to write different antibiotics? You don't have to write any antibiotic. But there is no point in changing the names and all that. It doesn't help. They can always go to the pharmacy, to the chemist, and get the information.
In this era of internet, they know what you have prescribed, and if you are doing this jugglery of changing names, they know it. Only thing is they don't have confidence, and you sell confidence. That whether this is required or not, they don't know. After day 3 or 4 of a normal viral illness, they get jittery and then they see you. Another question is, how much to mention on the prescription, within bracket, details of each and every sign, symptom included. I think the questioner, at the back of his mind, as I understand, is, in a busy clinic, it is literally not possible to write the pulse, the respiratory rate, whatever you are legally supposed to write. That's because of paucity of time. And time is money. So any of the panelists would like to throw some light on it?
The commonest patient we get is a child of fever. And many times in the first 2 or 3 days, we do not have any clue about the focus of fever. There are only 4 serious causes of fever. One is meningitis, second is diphtheria, third is sepsis, and fourth is pneumonia. So one important symptom or sign related to each of these should be written. Child aged 3 years, or no neck stiffness, no patch, respiratory rate normal, capillary refill normal. But once you write this, it means that you have examined the child properly, and then the child is probably having something else which is not serious, and that's why you could prescribe only paracetamol. The point is that if you write brief notes, it goes a long way. If you don't know anything, you better write GOK, God only knows, or IDK, I don't know, whatever it is, so that on day 3 you know that you did not know anything on day 1. That is the real purpose. And also during those next 3 days, whosoever else sees the patient gets an idea as to what had happened. So write brief notes that will save you medico-legally in your practice.
So one suggestion,
I think we said,
sorry.
We said with the information technology, everything has to be recorded. And you keep these records with you, and you don't have to write anything about your findings on the prescription. But please give the details of how the medicine is to be taken 6 hourly or 3 times a day. And those should be easy with this automation these days.
That's a good suggestion. And if you happen to be on the net, you read on YouTube, or you watch on YouTube Atul Gawande. He is an Indian by origin, but born and brought up in US. The checklist manifesto. I mean, he went to Boeing's factory and how they avoid errors. Suppose a crash is to take place in that 2-minute time what all they need to do on a checklist. So you should have a checklist, fever, these things. We will not go into the details. I think this really shows the audience are really keen to ask many, many questions, and I'll request the organizers to give them one of the email IDs where they can just post in the questions. We'll circulate amongst the panelists and those answers can be given. I'm very sure there are many, many unanswered questions. And Dr. Bhandari tells me abhi TB hai and so many gifts to be distributed. I think the choice is clear. We need to close the session. I thank my panelists, audience, and all of you for active participation. Thank you.
Well, friends, while listening to all this, I was just deliberating that alphabet P has got a very great significance today. It is a PCNI Pediatric Conference of Pal and Piyush, and Pramod has been giving a perfect finale to this conference. But all good things have to come to an end, and I invite Piyush, our dynamic young organizing secretary, to deliver a vote of thanks.
I won't take much of your time, but I guess I have some duties to fulfill that include the vote of thanks. It's just not sunk in that it is ending today. It seems that I just started today and it's already ending. It is a great honor and a real privilege for me to stand in front of all the distinguished delegates who have been gracious enough to spare their valuable time for taking part in PCNI 2012. I, on the behalf of IAP West Delhi, which conducted this conference under the patronage of IAP Delhi, take this opportunity to thank all of you for making this event a great success. I am sure all of you have felt at home during the sojourn in Delhi and carry happy and unforgettable memories of this mega event, which had been addressed by renowned speakers of national repute covering contemporary topics of everybody's interest. So firstly, I must thank all the speakers and the chairpersons who make the conference what it is. Then I have to thank Dr. Gombar, President IAP, Dr. G.P. Kaushal, Secretary, Delhi IAP, and Dr. Rajiv Seth, President-elect Delhi IAP, for their constant encouragement and their belief in us that we could get this job done. I also must thank all the members of the organizing committee of PCNI 2000 who have worked endlessly, tirelessly, day in and day out. It is only due to their selfless efforts that I stand here in front of all of you on their behalf, proudly basking in the success of this conference. Do pardon me if I forget to mention some names, but I need to thank Dr. Uttampal, our president, who envisioned this conference, and very, very special thanks to Dr. Deepak Gautam, Dr. Alok Bhandari, Dr. Sandeep Taneja, Dr. Vipul Jain, Dr. Vineet Sehgal, Dr. Arun Agrawal, Dr. Deepak Singla, Dr. Avinash Kulkarni, Dr. Devendra Gaba, Dr. Ramesh Datta, Dr. C.P. Sachdev, Dr. Sunil Mehndiratta, Dr. Anil Bajaj, Dr. A.K. Pant, Dr. Lalit Mehndiratta, Dr. Gaurav Sethi, Dr. D. Singh, Dr. Mahendra Gulhar, Dr. Salil Bhatnagar, Dr. Anil Gulati, and Dr. Gagan Malhotra. Last but not least, I would like to thank the people without whom support this conference would not have been possible, our sponsors, the coffers, at Sanofi, people, GSK, MSD, Juventus, Pfizer, Alchem, Micro, Pavia Pharmaceuticals, Aristo, Eris Montana, Apex Synergies, Abbott, Apollo Hospitals, Bharat Biotech, Dr. Reddy's Labs, Gaudium IVF, Invida, Johnson & Johnson, KLM Laboratories, New Life Mediquips, Star Imaging, USV, Merck, and Lupin Respira. Special thanks to Aditi Medivac, Tosha Vaccines House, and Guru Nanak Medical Hall. And the thank you note would not be complete without the mention of people who have been working tirelessly behind the scenes, non-stop, namely the event management people, the conference secretariat staff, and the hotel staff. And finally, a very, very special hurrah for our branch, IAP West Delhi City branch. Hip hip, hooray! Hip hip, hooray! Thank you very much.
Sir, कुछ छूट गया था तो I'll request Dr. Arya to please facilitate Dr. Gulati for conducting this session in an excellent manner. And this has been a conference with a difference, and now we'll just give a token of appreciation on behalf of the organizing committee to the people who have really worked very hard for the success of the conference. And I start with our dynamic Dr. Ramesh Datta, Chairman Reception Committee. Dr. Arya sir, please felicitate our team on this function, and Dr. Devinder Gaba, Dr. Datta is Dr. Devendra Gaba has been the chairman of the finance committee and a stalwart behind this conference. Then it is our Hamara Bajaj, Anil Bajaj. Audio visual, the website, the beauty, the initiation has been Dr. Anil Bajaj's initiative, and he was ably supported by Dr. A.K. Pant. Dr. A.K. Pant, please. The cultural evening grand show was a brainchild of Dr. C.P. Sajdev, and the backbone, Dr. C.P. Sajdev, as you know, is a very talented artist, cultural man in himself. And the scientific session, the backbone was a strong, towering Deepak Singla, who was a great strength to our real fighter, Vineet Sehgal, who has really toiled very, very hard to make the scientific program, fixing up with all the speakers and the sponsors and giving time to everybody. And then young, budding Gaurav Sethi, and I think everybody will like to felicitate Dr. Vipul Jain, the dynamic joint organizing secretary. He has hurt his joint during the conference also while dancing yesterday. So he's the perfect joint organizing secretary. And the other joint organizing secretary is Dr. Sandeep Taneja, who has been taking care of the finances. And the written work was meticulously taken care by the other joint organizing secretary, Dr. Arun Agarwal. Delhi IAP was a big support to make it, to give the character of Pediatric Conference of North India to this conference. And the man who really worked hard to spread this conference throughout the North India is Dr. G.P. Kaushal, Secretary IAP Delhi. Dr. Rajiv Seth, President-elect IAP Delhi, was another leading light with Dr. Gombar during this endeavor. And the organizing co-chairperson, Dr. Deepak Gautam, the most pleasant face of IAP West Delhi. Or Abbari stalwarts, Piyush Khanna, organizing secretary. A big hand of applause. And the most humble, senior most veteran, Dr. Uttam Paul. And इसके बाद lucky draw, but conference with a difference. एक co-organizing secretary, Bhandari sir.
To complete the picture, the mastermind, troubleshooter, Dr. Alok Bhandari.
कोई पर्टिकुलर डिमांड किससे निकलवाए हैं? तो मेरा ही नाम ले लिया गया सर। एक डॉक्टर सिंगला जो नजदीक है, आइडिया इज टू सेव टाइम, बाकी कुछ नहीं। डॉक्टर मिर्जा मोहम्मद कामरान, कमरे में हैं क्या कामरान? क्या भाई नेक्स्ट को मौका दिया जाए? डॉक्टर आशा चौहान, मिलता जुलता नाम। आइए मैडम, प्लीज एक ये सुंदर मोबाइल फोन एरिस की तरफ से लीजिए। आइए प्लीज मैडम। डॉक्टर उत्तम पॉल सर प्लीज। डॉक्टर संदीप दुग्गल। So now is the turn for mega lucky draw. We have three rice cookers. We have three rice cookers which have been sponsored by, again, a young dynamic Aditi Medivac. Sanjay Mittal is here. And Dr. S.K. Kabra. वेट करें उनकी या अगले को दें? डॉक्टर राजेंद्र अग्रवाल 981111। डॉक्टर पॉल सर। डॉक्टर S.K. जैन 9312263771। यही है द्वारका का नंबर। डॉक्टर मीनाक्षी शर्मा। डॉक्टर मीनाक्षी, कल इनको मिल गया था प्राइज, इन्होंने सोचा अब लॉ ऑफ प्रोबेबिलिटी में बारी नहीं आएगी। MP गुप्ता जी 9815192847। हाँ ये जल्दी एनकरेजमेंट दो, जल्दी बोलो नेक्स्ट। आशीष गर्ग शायद 9811236130। हरि किशन 78। Now we have two OTGs. A vacuum cleaner sponsored by Bharat Biotech, and the lucky person अर्चना जी को मौका मिल रहा है वैक्यूम क्लीनर से घर साफ करने। डॉक्टर अर्चना 9540128705। मैंने मुश्किल काम कह दिया तो ये फिर डॉक्टर रुचिता नेगी की बात है। मैंने यूज करना पड़ेगा। डॉक्टर आवाज आई है कि डॉक्टर विनीत अच्छा काम स्टेज संभालते हैं, उन्हें दीजिए। और डॉक्टर कौशल को रिक्वेस्ट। डॉक्टर रमन कुंद्रा। डॉक्टर रमन कुंद्रा। डॉक्टर वीरेंद्र कटोच। ये वैक्यूम क्लीनर मैडम ले गई और ओटीजी कटोच साहब लेके जा रहे हैं। दिस इज अगेन स्पॉन्सर्ड बाय भारत बायोटेक। इसके बाद अभी LCD देखेंगे। सुनील मेहंदी रहता 9910069948 है सर। This passes on to the next person. Sunil is a Dr. Pavan Verma 97185999। पवन जी LCD टीवी लेके जा रहे हैं। तीन जने चाहिए इसको देने के लिए। ऑल द 3 जॉइंट सेक्रेटरीज जॉइन हैंड्स। And tea is being served outside, and heartiest thanks to everybody. फिर मिलेंगे। जय श्री राम।
organizing